I spent the early part of this week in a 2-day meeting with interfaith colleagues from all around the country talking about community organizing. This dismantling of patriarchy and oppression that is in front of us. We were talking about what it takes to move the world as it is toward the world as it should be. You know, light, breezy stuff. And when we gathered, all of us, maybe 20 leaders from every faith around the country, when we gathered up together for our group picture, you know the photographer always tries to think of some sort of cheesy icebreaker to get everyone to smile. And instead of saying to us, say cheese, she said to us, say, we're saving the world. And do you know we actually smiled? We put our arms around each other's shoulders and we're like, yeah, we're saving the world, which honestly felt very, very strange to me because saving the world is not now and never has been near the top of my Monday morning to-do list. But there we were. Not saving the world, but at least having real conversations, doing the things we were supposed to be doing. There we were in the midst of all the righteous work when my colleague and my friend, Pastor Getty, who happens to be a key community organizing leader in the South Bronx, and a voice for social responsibility among Spanish-speaking evangelical churches around the country. My friend Getty, he jumps up from his seat with no announcement, no words. He jumps up and he flat runs out of the room. And so, as you would be, we were nervous. We thought, did we say something? Did I say something? Is it a problem with the air conditioning? We fretted. We thought, did all of the world saving get to be a bit too much for Pastor Getty? What was it we did? We fretted until just a few minutes later, Getty walked right back in the room. He took his seat somewhat abashed, and he told us that he had just gotten an automatic text alert about an earthquake in Puerto Rico. His mother lives there, he said, and it turns out that the last time there was an earthquake there, he didn't get through to her right away, and he couldn't get through to her for 3 days, and so he had to check. He had to check to make sure she was okay, because that's what you do when there is an earthquake in the place where your beloved elder mother lives. You go and you call right away. Excuse me for, he said, and he took a deep breath and a pause. He said, excuse me for being human. We all went on after that without comment, and I've been thinking about it. Excuse me for being human, he said. Excuse me for being human, for having a mother that I love, for being in a relationship to something more important than whatever it is we are supposed to be doing around this conference room table. Excuse me for having a commitment bigger than anything else, for loving anything so deeply that it commands me to step outside of even my own highest aspiration. Excuse me for being human, Pastor Getty said, with no defensiveness, but a little bit of shame. And I think, in fact, that inconvenient, vulnerable, authentic humanity is exactly the thing that makes him the kind of leader that the world actually needs right now. We need to be more human. We need leaders who are more human. We need systems that are more human. We need to love in a way that lays claim to us. We need to be about something larger than the task at hand, pretty much no matter what the task at hand is. And if we aren't, if we can't, if we won't be more human, the stakes of our inhumanity could not be more dire. Some of you know I do a lot of thinking and a lot of writing, probably too much preaching about human nature. I think a lot about what it means to be human, frankly, too much. It's a weird, quirky habit I have, pondering whether people are basically good, basically bad, basically somewhere in between. I have been known to overcomplicate the whole business and to use really unnecessarily big words when describing it. You all have experienced that firsthand. But Pastor Getty reminded me this week, along with all the resources that you've already heard in this service, the wise ones sharing their wisdom with the generations that follow them, Pastor Getty reminded me that maybe being human in an inhumane world is not all that complicated at all. It is difficult, it is demanding, but it is not rocket science. In the 10 rules to be more human that Jean Vanier laid out in his 90th year, it all seems so bracingly simple. How to be more human? In the face of systems of searing inhumanity, Vanier says, listen to each other. Know what you actually want out of life. Point yourself towards something higher and more meaningful than success. Give a damn about someone other than yourself. Call your mother when there is an earthquake. And the great poet Rainier Maria Rilke, writing to that young man who only wants to learn the mystical truths of life, he says that creating something honest in this world isn't about achieving anything at all, but having the patience to pay attention to the questions, to notice the world around you and others in it. And so this morning, I want to posit that being human is not complicated at all. Maybe those wise teachers are telling us that being human simply means being able to empathize and protecting your capacity for empathy at all costs. Maybe it just means having access to empathy even at the expense of efficiency. Being human means leading with empathy, not letting that empathy be clouded by the drive to achieve or win or produce or prove anything. And I know under that definition that your dog may well be much more human than you are on most days, but who's to say that is not altogether just fine? If being human means being claimed by something larger than the task at hand, it may be the only thing that saves us from ourselves and from the inhumane efficiency of a world always working to do more, to have more, to be more, relentlessly onward to the end. As a thought experiment, we might ask what the world would be like if we were not human enough to put empathy before whatever it is we set out to achieve this morning. What would it look like if we really were the most effective machines for production and accumulation that we could possibly be? What would it look like if all this inconvenient empathy did not slow us down? The thought experiment is in fact not one we have to make up. We kind of know what sort of mess we'd be in if we were not inconvenienced by complicated and messy things like love. My favorite illustration of this fundamentally inhuman world is what scientists like to call the Paperclip Apocalypse. Perhaps you have heard of this one. The notion comes from a thought experiment by British philosopher Nick Bostrom. In 2014, he was doing some writing about artificial intelligence. He was wondering how humans could ever hope to control artificial intelligence that might be orders of magnitude smarter than we are. His thought experiment goes something like this. Let's just say that someone programs and then enables, flicks the switch on an artificial intelligence whose single and unmitigated goal is to produce paperclips. Just that. That's the whole program. There are no brakes on the system. The only command is this: make paperclips. And so, to produce paperclips, to be the most effective achiever of paperclip production possible, suppose that artificial intelligence is given much of what we humans have, the ability to learn, to adapt, to manipulate the environment in any way to achieve that greater goal, in this case of making paperclips. It means that if there is a way of turning something into paperclips, then that non-human superintelligence will find it and do it. It will gather all available resources. It is single-minded and relentless. And so it will commandeer resources currently applied to any and all other activities, including the sustenance of everyone you have ever known or loved. Given the freedom to keep achieving that singular goal, this non-human intelligence would soon inundate the entire world with paperclips. It will fight the inefficient and empathetic humans for resources. It will win. What once went into supporting and sustaining life will be channeled into the manufacture of more and more paperclips. The whole world will drown in paperclips. The sun will be blotted out by paperclips. Life as we know it and love, and people and animals and bugs and pine trees and everything but everything that is not paperclips or paperclip producing resource will cease to exist, and in the end, the paperclip apocalypse will claim us all. And of course, it's just a thought experiment. And it's weirdly kind of fun to think about a paperclip apocalypse. I'm pretty sure they made it paperclips instead of something scarier so that we could continue to be just a little bit charmed by the whole idea. But the fact remains, our own humanity is the only thing that saves us, the only thing that slows us down. Our willingness to run away from the table when the ones we love are at risk. Our ability to prioritize belonging to each other over top of relentless achievement is the only thing that slows the wheels enough to make a difference. And our world is on a knife's edge now more than ever. Because too often we have allowed ourselves and our leaders to put their fundamental humanity below the level of their own abiding greed and desire to achieve. We have put a command to make more things, be it paperclips or anything else, relentlessly above our inconvenient and beautiful humanity. We have done it to ourselves, and we may not face the paperclip apocalypse, but the environmental collapse all around us is frankly not so very different, is it? The world, a relentless machine designed to turn resources into profit, empathy and humanity an inconvenient barrier to productivity, power given free rein to move resources from sustaining life toward life's devastation. It is not so very different. In this way, the source of the two apocalypses, one theoretically whimsical and one altogether too real. It is not so different after all. In a word, the source of the apocalypse is inhumanity. Galloping and unbridled inhumanity that turns the world into paperclips and people into consumers. Inhumanity may be the greatest threat of all, and we do not need any philosophers whatsoever to tell us all about it. There is, in fact, a teenage girl with braids telling us all about it on the front page of every newspaper in America this week. I don't know if you've seen her, the young prophet, Greta Thunberg, 16 years old, speaking to the United Nations. She sat there with her pink shirt and her braids, and she captivated the world in part because her fearless message to the world's leaders was mostly just a single bewildered question. Do you feel nothing? She asked them. You who do nothing, do you feel nothing? She took the climate crisis and she narrowed it down from an abstract idea and a set of debates with so many statistics and charts, and she framed it as a crisis of empathy, a crisis of inhumanity. It has been such all along, and she named it. That young girl on Monday, speaking to literally the most powerful people in the world, she sat there, looked them right in the eye, and said, "This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us, young people, for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I am one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginnings of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?" she said. It is as if she gave a megaphone to the message that the wisest among us have been preaching all along. Will you listen? She was shouting. Will you listen to the experience of anyone outside your bubble? Will you run out of the room when business as usual is no longer adequate? Will you bear witness to the suffering of the people? She did not apologize for being human, and she did not mince words about the dire cost of inhumanity. How dare you be anything less than fully human at a time like this, she asked us all. How dare you put your efficiency over top of your empathy? How dare you steal my childhood and my future? How dare you? There is a reason that I felt uneasy about smiling at the camera about saving the world. Way back at the beginning of this sermon, remember then? When a whole bunch of organizers and faith leaders and movers and shakers put our arms around each other and mugged for the camera, I was uneasy about smiling in that moment because saving the world is pretty much impossible, and the work ahead is vast. The stakes are dire. The uphill path forward to change so unimaginably steep, I am not sure if we can climb it. But I remember my friend Pastor Getty running out of the room. "Excuse me for being human," he said. And I remember Jean Vanier telling us that our humanity is all wrapped up in our empathy, and Greta Thunberg thundering to the UN Security Council about how they have let their humanity slip away. And I am reminded that perhaps the only way to save the world is, in fact, to cultivate our own humanity. Maybe every single time we raise up empathy over achievement, we do some part of world-saving work. Maybe the inhumane forces aligned to drive us apart are combated not just by policy, not just by strategy, not just by leadership, but by humanity asserting itself over and over again, from the smallest scale between us to the largest scale among nations. Let us begin saving the world by being more human, by demanding humanity from our leaders and doing so without apology, by running from whatever room we are in when love demands we do so, by placing our empathy above all else, and by calling ourselves out when we fail to do so, by listening to each other's stories, paying attention to each other's needs, knowing ourselves well enough to let go of the performance of our own success, acknowledging that in these brief and bright lives we are given, we are all in this together. This world needs more humanity. Every single thing depends upon it. So what can I do? What can you do today to be more fully human?